John Maler Collier was a British painter and writer. He belonged to Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. This movement's idea was to represent nature as accurately as possible. Their paintings were inspired by mythology and poetry. Collier specialized in portraits. An interesting fact from Collier's biography: he was married twice, and his wives were sisters. He had children from both marriages. Watch the video to the end. First, we want to tell you what subjects Collier chose for his most famous works, and then some interesting facts from his biography. Collier painted either scenes from myths and legends or real people. For example, he made portraits of Rudyard Kipling and Charles Darwin, and also depicted people who we can no longer recognize. But let's focus on some of the most famous and picturesque paintings by Collier. This work is called Clytemnestra after the murder. It was painted in 1882, when Collier was only 32 years old. It is interesting that John depicted Clytemnestra twice, the second time 33 years later. This is a scene from Greek mythology. Clytemnestra is the wife of Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and the twin sister of Helen of Troy. Agamemnon kills their daughter, Iphigenia, so that the Greeks can set sail and reach Troy. When Agamemnon returns home with his mistress Cassandra, grief-stricken and almost mad Clytemnestra murders both of them. That is the scene Collier depicted. Clytemnestra is drawing the curtain aside, challenging us to find her victims in the darkness. Collier painted this work in 1885. We see the sorceress from the Odyssey, Circe, next to a tiger and a leopard. It seems she invites us to approach, but the darkness behind her is somewhat threatening. This painting is from 1889. In some Jewish folklore, Lilith appears as Adam's first wife, who was created to be his maid from dust. But later she ran away from the Garden of Eden, for she didn't want to obey Adam. Actually, he made her lie beneath him, and she refused. Lilith was eventually discovered in the Red Sea, an area that was filled with hundreds of demons, and she was mating with them and bearing new demons all the time. In Collier's painting, Lilith is surrounded by the snake, and she is enjoying it. It seems that the artist wanted to say that she is embracing her sin, even relishing it with his work. By the way, Collier painted Eve as well. Here is this work. Let's look at it and then move on. One of the most famous paintings by John Collier is Lady Godiva. It was made in 1897 and is based on a very old English legend from around the 12th century. There lived Leofric, Earl of Mercia, who promised his wife Godiva to reduce taxes on his citizens if she would ride through the city on a horse without any clothes. Leofric was sure that his proud wife would never do such a thing, but he was wrong. She did this, and she was clever enough to ask people in advance to close all the windows and not to peep. The Earl had to admit defeat and reduce taxes. There is an old German legend that in mountains near Wartburg there lived a beautiful goddess. They called her Holder, but in the Middle Ages began to associate her with Venus. The mountain she lived in was thus called Venusberg. Once a traveling poet and knight, Tannhauser, was nearby and, curious, decided to visit the cave of Venus. He reached his destination and found himself in a magical hall full of light. Venus, whose beauty no mortal can imagine or describe, came out to meet him. Tannhauser became her lover and spent 7 years in her magical hall. But he was a Christian, and with time began to think that such life was disastrous for his soul, and one day decided to leave the beautiful Venus and return to the Christian world. Women are almost always Collier's main characters. They are very feminine, each with her own destiny and always having strength, even power. They can be real people, goddesses, heroines of ancient myths, or characters from novels and old legends. In one painting, a prodigal daughter returns to her parents. In another, a young wife cheated her elderly husband. Actually, Collier made 2 paintings on the same theme: the fallen idol and recognition. The scene, we again see a woman, this time luxuriously dressed, who whispers her sins to the priest. And now let's talk about some interesting facts from John Collier's biography, as we promised. The artist was born on January 27, 1850, into a noble family. He was the second son of Robert Collier, who was a distinguished lawyer and judge, as well as a member of Parliament and the first Lord Monkswell. His father, in his spare time, was interested in painting, and only after being encouraged by father, John went to Slade School of Fine Art in London to study under Edward John Poynter. 3 years later, he went to Munich, and from there to Paris to study under Jean-Paul Laurens. Collier's first exhibition was in 1874 at the Royal Academy, but he didn't attract much attention until 1877. After this year, he organized an exhibition every year till the time of his death. He also exhibited his works at the Royal Society of Portrait Painters and became the vice president there later on. With time, Collier became a big part of the family of Thomas Henry Huxley. He married 2 of Huxley's daughters and was a close friend of his son, the writer Leonard Huxley. Collier's first wife was Marian Huxley. They got married in 1879. As well as her husband, she had also studied at Slade and had exhibited between 1880 and 1884 3 of her works at the Royal Academy. However, after their daughter was born in 1884, Marian suffered from depression. Collier took her to Paris in hope to find a cure. Unfortunately, she died of pneumonia in 1887. 2 years later, John married her sister, Ethel Huxley. The marriage was not warmly accepted, though. Moreover, until 1907, such a marriage was forbidden in England, so the ceremony took place in Norway. Collier's daughter by his first marriage, Joyce, was a portrait miniaturist. By his second wife, Ethel, he had a daughter and a son, Lawrence and Joan. His son, Lawrence, was the British ambassador to Norway. John Collier died in 1934. His works today are in many cities and countries. They are stored in London, Paris, Florence, as well as in private collections all around the world. Did you like this video? Then like it, subscribe to our channel The Mind of Art, and hit the bell not to miss new uploads. See you soon in new videos. Bye!